Remember when Michigan State football was really good and they were a playoff team? I am guessing that you do. Now, do you remember the running back that year who was a true freshman who looked like one of the brightest stars in all of college football? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. LJ Scott was seemingly in college football forever, but sadly he never quite became a superstar like many thought he would, and actually got in trouble for breaking the same law 8 different times. He is retired from football, and it looks like it's not an option for him moving forwards, but today we're going to talk about the entire football story of LJ Scott, his time at Michigan State, and what happened to his once promising football career. But first, be sure to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you love college football, suggest another player I should look at next, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload. And now, let's talk about what happened to LJ Scott right after the intro.
I've been having hood dreams, ball player, rap star, Billy been take BMW, I ain't got no black Harley dog raiders. 2 twin Glocks and make them shake it like a salt shake. Ain't make it to the league, but I'm still ballin', I was born for this. Never thought I'd see the day when I can make it, should I go legit?
Going back in time, LJ and his brother Isaiah both grew up huge fans of the game of football and were both extremely talented as well. They both had bright futures in the game, but sadly they grew up in a really tough area of Youngstown, Ohio, and it was going to hurt their future. His mother packed the bags and the family as they moved to Hubbard, Ohio, and they had a chance to be in a better area and fully pursue football. LJ ran for an 80-yard touchdown on his first high school carry ever, and that was just a flash of what would come for him next. He'd eventually blossom into a 4-star recruit and was the 6th best running back in the class of 2015. He played varsity all 4 years of high school, where he'd go on to have a monster high school career. He ran for a total of 7,746 yards and 98 touchdowns. He played both sides of the ball and put up good numbers as a defensive back as well, with 10 interceptions and 108 tackles. In terms of recruiting, he started to visit Michigan State and fell in love with the school and had a great relationship with Pat Narduzzi. He also loved what Michigan State had to offer and the ability to play Big Ten football, and maybe his brother could play with him too. He was seen as one of the best backs in the country, and Ohio State wanted him really bad. Eventually, he would commit to the Spartans over the Buckeyes, Alabama, and Auburn, and he was going to get a chance to play snaps early because Jeremy Langford was now gone. Some other notable running backs that were rated higher than him coming out of high school were Saquon Barkley, Mike Weber, and Josh Adams, and he was ready to cement his name as the best back in the country. Strangely enough, Mike Weber was very interested in Michigan State as well, and actually ended up flipping from Michigan to Ohio State, where he would end up playing. So many things happen when a player commits, and it's just honestly fascinating how much one commitment can change the entire college football landscape. Let's get back to talking about LJ Scott. He hit the ground running his freshman year, leading the team in yards, touchdowns, and carries with 699 yards, 11 scores, and 146 carries. He was named the Big Ten Player of the Week twice in games against Purdue and Oregon, and he was named to the Big Ten All-Freshman team as well. Michigan State had a thrilling season with crazy wins over Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State, plus a late LJ Scott touchdown helped them beat number 4 Iowa in the Big Ten Championship, and that game was practically a college football playoff game. They ended up getting in as a 4 seed, but sadly they lost 38-0 to Alabama in the first round. To diehard college football fans, LJ Scott was a household name and a guy who was projected to be one of the next superstars of the league. And he would honestly improve as a sophomore. 2016 would be more of the same for him as he led the team with 994 yards on 184 carries and 6 touchdowns, and that was a number that dropped and that concerned some people. But most of that can be blamed on the offense, as in 2016 the Spartans went 3-9 because it was a rebuilding year, and the quarterback was a young guy named Brian Lewerke. Despite having a good 2016 season, LJ would face some off-the-field controversies. In March of 2016, he'd be pulled over in Ashland, Ohio for going 87 miles per hour in a 70 mile per hour zone and for driving without a license. That's funny, I don't know why you would do that, but in April of 2016, he was then involved in a car accident near Cleveland, and he'd be arrested for leaving the scene of the crash and once again driving without a license. Those charges would ultimately be dropped though, as he pled guilty to reckless driving. In 2016, LJ would be pulled over again on Michigan State's campus for driving without his headlights on. He was with a friend at the time as well, and they had solo cups with alcohol in the car, and he would pass a sobriety test, but he was still charged with driving with an open alcohol container and with a suspended license. License seems to be coming up a lot. Both charges would be dropped after he pled guilty to 2 counts of impending traffic, and this kid just couldn't stay out of trouble in his car. 2 more times in 2016, LJ Scott would be pulled over for driving without a suspended license. And no, I am not making this up. In 2017, Scott would lead his team for a third straight year in yards, carries, and touchdowns as he totaled 1,044 scrimmage yards and 9 scores. But what on earth was going on off the field? The Spartans would win 10 games that year behind Brian Lewerke's arm, and this punctuated a great season for him. Unfortunately, the season would once again see controversy as in October of 2017, he'd be arrested for a 7th time for driving a violation. You may be asking what the crime was. This time, it was driving with a suspended license once again. This was the 7th time he had been arrested for something of this nature, and this started to get a lot of national attention. It even got picked up by Sports Illustrated and ESPN, but people were wondering if he'd even play again for Michigan State. It was getting ridiculous at this point, and Coach D'Antonio said, quote, LJ Scott now has a valid driver's license, and his status will definitely be affected this Saturday, but he will still play. That weekend, he would end up rushing for 87 yards and 1 touchdown on 22 carries, which was one of his better games that year. He would end up playing the rest of the season and even scored 2 touchdowns in their Holiday Bowl win over Washington State, but his off-the-field issues is what he became known for. He'd rushed the ball 24 times for 84 yards and no scores in their game against the Ducks, and his bad senior year would get worse. I have a good feeling you guys probably know what's coming at this point. In September of 2019, LJ would get arrested for driving violations, making it the 8th time he had done this. This time it wasn't for a license, but he was driving without a valid license plate, driving without insurance, and he made an improper turn. I mean, I can't even make this up at this point. Every single possible violation you can get for driving, this kid seemingly had, and one has to wonder how many times he was doing this and just didn't get caught. Going back to his football career, he was invited to the Senior Bowl, but declined to play in it due to a nagging injury, and he went to prepare for the NFL Draft. He ended up finishing his Michigan State career with 2,855 yards and 27 touchdowns, and he was invited to the Combine where he would sit out running the 40-yard dash, and it becomes obvious why he decided to sit that out. His 40 time, he ran 4.7 on his pro day, which if you know anything about football, that's not very good, especially for a skill position. Mel Kiper had LJ as a day 3 draft prospect, saying he'd go in the 5th or 7th round, but unfortunately he would never get that draft night call. He was, however, invited to a rookie camp by the Baltimore Ravens, where he would go unsigned. He was then invited to try out close to home with the Browns, and on May 13th, 2019, he would go on to sign as an undrafted free agent. Strangely though, just a couple days later, he decided to leave the Browns and retire from football altogether. He would also be invited to participate in the XFL draft pool, but he would not accept, and something happened behind closed doors that we don't know about. So what happened to LJ Scott? Well, this is going to be an interesting one. Obviously, the off-the-field issues were something that's hard to ignore, and I mean it wasn't super severe, but just the fact that he kept making the same mistake and not learning from his wrongdoings was kind of concerning, and that was definitely something that was probably brought up at the Combine. This kid played 4 years of college football and started 4 years of high school football, so his body had been worn down, and that injury his senior year did not help him at all. His stock was pretty high as a junior, as he could have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and he should have just left for the NFL then. His 40 time was a 4.7, which is not going to cut it in the NFL, and he just wasn't a high-level NFL athlete by the end of it. I'm also starting to wonder if he was maybe a little bit overrated coming out of high school, as he did put up absurd numbers, and maybe he was not as good of a prospect or a pro prospect as many thought. I think at the end of the day, LJ Scott is a great guy and a great football player, but I think the best thing he can do is go take a driver's ed course or something. LJ Scott was a great college football running back and a guy that had a lot of potential, and I did enjoy watching him as a Spartan, and I do wish he got more of a chance in the NFL, but we will never know if he would have made it. I mean, after 2 days he turned his offer down, and maybe he would have squeaked onto the Browns rotation and done something, but we will never know. But either way, LJ Scott is moving in a different direction, and I hope the best for him, and if you ever watch this LJ, I hope the best for you. I had a lot of fun researching today's video, and his story is pretty incredible. And if you enjoyed his story or enjoyed my content, please be sure to give it a like. And if you want more college football fans to be able to see this, please let me know your thoughts down in the comment section and smash that like button so more people can see it. Be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on any more spectacular college football content. And check out my video about what happened to Connor Cook and all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.